Welcome to our channel. In today's video, we're exploring a topic that many of us may not think about, but it's one that can greatly impact your happiness in old age living with your children. It might seem like the perfect arrangement, but by the end of this video, you'll discover a surprising reason why it might not be the best choice. Make sure to watch until the end, because the most interesting fact will reveal why staying close to family could be a bigger mistake than you think. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss out on insightful content like this. The video opens with a deep dive into a topic that is often romanticized: living with your adult children in old age. For many, this idea evokes images of warmth, family unity, and mutual support. Marta, the protagonist, had been widowed for 7 years. After the death of her husband, she was left with an aching loneliness that only deepened with time. Despite keeping herself busy with hobbies, community activities, and occasional visits from friends, something was missing. Her daughter, Emilia, lived only a few towns away with her husband and 2 young children. They visited Marta frequently, but each time they left, the house seemed emptier than before. One day, Emilia suggested what seemed like the perfect solution. "Mom, why don't you come live with us?" Emilia asked, her tone warm and sincere. "You'll be closer to the kids, and we can all help each other out. We have plenty of space, and the children would love to have you around all the time." Marta hesitated at first. After all, she had grown accustomed to her quiet independence. But the prospect of being surrounded by her daughter, son-in-law, and beloved grandchildren filled her with excitement. She imagined a life filled with laughter, shared meals, and the simple joys of watching her grandchildren grow up. It was a vision that seemed to promise fulfillment in her later years. The loneliness that had haunted her since her husband's passing could finally be replaced by the comfort of family. Within a few months, Marta sold her apartment and moved into Emilia's home. The transition felt seamless. Emilia's house was spacious, with a cozy room for Marta overlooking the garden. She felt welcomed and needed from the very start. Her days were suddenly filled with the sound of children's laughter, the smell of freshly baked bread, and the vibrant energy of family life. For the first time in years, Marta felt a renewed sense of purpose. In the early months, life at Emilia's house was everything Marta had hoped for. Every morning, she woke to the sound of her grandchildren's giggles. She found herself joyfully preparing breakfast for them: French toast with extra syrup, eggs in cute shapes, and sometimes a special treat of pancakes shaped like their favorite cartoon characters. Emilia would smile at her mother and say, "The kids love having you here, Mom. You're amazing with them." Helping with the grandchildren reminded Marta of her days as a teacher. There was something deeply satisfying about guiding the little ones through their schoolwork. The sense of pride she felt when her grandson came to her and said, "Grandma, can you help me with my math homework?" was indescribable. She would sit down with him, patient and kind, just as she had been with her students years ago. Marta believed she was contributing something valuable, that her presence in Emilia's home was enriching everyone's lives, including her own. This feeling of purpose was echoed by a study from Stanford University, which Marta read about online. The research suggested that intergenerational living could enhance the happiness and sense of purpose for elderly family members. The study validated her own experience. She felt as though she had found the secret to aging gracefully: being surrounded by family, offering help when needed, and receiving love in return. It was as though she had rediscovered her vitality, her reason for waking up each morning. The days passed in a harmonious rhythm. Marta would help Emilia with the household chores, assist the grandchildren with their homework, and still find time to read or take a walk in the garden. She even taught the children how to bake cookies, passing down recipes that had been in the family for generations. Her heart swelled with pride when her granddaughter asked, "Grandma, can you teach me to make those cookies again? They're my favorite." Everything seemed perfect. Marta felt like she was living in the family life she had always dreamed of. But as the months wore on, subtle shifts began to occur, changes that would eventually unravel her idyllic existence. As time went by, Marta began to notice that her role in the household was gradually shifting. What had started as occasional help turned into a daily responsibility. Without fully realizing it, she had gone from being a helpful guest to becoming an integral part of the family's routine. One evening, as she was preparing dinner for the family, Marta overheard Emilia speaking on the phone with a friend. "Honestly, I don't know how we would manage without my mom here. She's been such a blessing. Between work and the kids, I don't think I could handle it all on my own." At first, the words filled Marta with pride. Emilia needed her. She was a valuable part of the household. But as she stirred the pot on the stove, something else crept into her mind, a feeling she couldn't quite name. Was it unease? Doubt? Marta brushed it off, telling herself that it was natural to feel a little tired. After all, she was busy from morning to night, helping with the children, running errands, and keeping the house in order. Yet as the days passed, she found herself increasingly drained. There was always something that needed to be done, some task that required her attention. She realized that she hadn't had a moment to herself in weeks. The quiet afternoons she used to enjoy in her old apartment, reading or going for long walks, had become a distant memory. Her once leisurely mornings were now filled with early wake-ups, diaper changes, and preparing school lunches. The once delightful task of helping with the grandchildren's homework started to feel like a chore. Marta began to notice that her days were blending into one another, each following the same pattern: breakfast, schoolwork, lunch, chores, dinner, bedtime. There was no room for spontaneity, no time for herself. She longed for the freedom she had once taken for granted, back when she lived alone. As Marta's responsibilities in the household continued to grow, she started to feel the weight of her lost autonomy. The vibrant, independent woman who had once enjoyed solitary walks in the park, afternoons at the library, and coffee with friends had been replaced by someone she barely recognized. Her days were no longer her own. Psychologist Erik Erikson's theory on the stages of development, particularly his focus on autonomy in old age, began to resonate deeply with her. Erikson had emphasized the importance of maintaining a sense of independence in one's later years, warning that a loss of autonomy could lead to feelings of stagnation and despair. Marta reflected on this as she stood in the kitchen one evening, washing dishes after another long day of caring for her grandchildren. She realized that she had sacrificed much of her own life for the sake of her family, but at what cost? Her friends, who she once saw regularly, had stopped calling as frequently. "You're always so busy," they would say. And it was true, she was always busy. Busy caring for the children, busy cleaning, busy cooking. The quiet moments she used to savor, where she could sit with a cup of tea and read a novel, had disappeared. Even her walks in the garden felt like stolen moments, hurried and interrupted by a cry from the house or a request for help. One Sunday morning, as she flipped Mickey Mouse-shaped pancakes for the children, Marta realized that she couldn't remember the last time she had done something for herself. She couldn't recall the last time she had taken a leisurely walk with a friend or spent a quiet afternoon with a book. Instead, her life had become consumed by the needs of others. That evening, after the children had gone to bed, Marta sat on the front porch, staring up at the stars. The night was calm and quiet, a stark contrast to the busyness of her days. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to think about her own desires, her own needs. Is this really the life I want for the rest of my years? She asked herself, the question hanging in the air like a balloon floating into the night. Epictetus' teachings on time and autonomy echoed in her mind. Time does not stop, nor does life. Marta began to understand the full weight of those words. Her time was slipping away, and she was spending it fulfilling other people's needs, not her own. She had fallen into the role of the perfect grandmother, the perfect mother, but in doing so, she had lost sight of who she was. Her sense of self had slowly eroded under the demands of family life. Marta thought back to her old apartment, the small space that had been entirely hers. She remembered the freedom of choosing how to spend her days, of deciding when to go out and when to stay in. She missed those days. She missed herself. As she sat there reflecting on her choices, Marta realized that she needed to reclaim her autonomy. She loved her daughter, her grandchildren, but she could no longer sacrifice her own well-being for the sake of their needs. It was time to find a balance, one where she could be present for her family, but also present for herself. The next morning, Marta spoke to Amelia. "I've been thinking," she began. "I love being here with you and the kids, but I need to make some changes. I need more time for myself." Amelia was surprised at first, but quickly understood. "Mom, you've done so much for us. We don't want you to feel overwhelmed. We'll make it work," she said, her tone filled with appreciation and understanding. From that day on, Marta started to carve out time for herself again. She took long walks, reconnected with friends, and found joy in the quiet moments she had once treasured. And although she still helped with the grandchildren, she no longer felt like her entire life revolved around them. For the first time in months, Marta felt like she had regained a piece of herself. In the end, Marta learned that while family is important, so is personal autonomy. As Epictetus and Erickson had taught, time and independence are precious, and it is essential to nurture both, even in the later stages of life. Thank you for watching the video to the end. If you liked the video, put a like, subscribe to our channel, share this video on social networks, and write your opinion in the comments. It will help to promote this video in YouTube so that as many people who need it heard this information.